Alrighty, time for our second session of this morning. Next up, we've got Django Security for Novices, and our presenter is Ronald Maravanyika. I hope I got that pronunciation right now. He is the co-founder of Zimbo Pi, a non-profit that focuses on empowering women to join technological fields. DSF member and PSF managing member, has a day job as a DevOps engineer for global technology company. Enjoys making meaningful connections with individuals that are interested in technology. Cricket and F1 fan. Oh, you'd love my colleagues that can't stop talking about the F1, and that's something that I have no idea what's going on with. But thank you so much for coming to present this talk on Django Security for Novices. Thanks, Ronald.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much to the organizers of this conference. I know it was very difficult for them this year to get me here. So this talk is based on something that I stumbled upon when I was just starting. I was outside of the corporate sector, and it was just me working on this. So I realized after deploying this that I did a couple of things wrong, and the product that I was working on was already in production. So I hope this will help someone out there. So we'll just take a look at what I will be talking about, potentially how you can sort of expose credentials involuntarily. We'll also talk about the generic Django admin, what might catch you there. Then we will talk the security aspects that are implemented by Django by default, which are called middleware. Then we'll also take a look at the best practices, and then we will close it out. So the Django developer core team, they work on security quite often. So if you take a look at the number of releases that they do, you see that there is a 25%, 26% security releases. In 2021, it was a bit higher. It was around 36%. But it got lower in 2022 to 25%. But on average, if you look at the past years, on average, they release security updates 26 more than other features. So for the Django core team, it's quite a priority for them. And I'm just happy that it's something that they take quite serious. You can also take a look at how you can raise security issues. They've got very good documentation of how you can do that. So once you start your project, Django admin start project, in this case, I just did a sample of a project called PyConsa. So that would be the generic structure that comes when you start a new project. And the thing that will get you here is your settings. Your settings is the thing that can compromise your project, right? And in the settings file, there are several settings that you need to take cognizance of. So the first thing is debug is equal to true. That is quite useful when you're in development. For obvious reasons, it will give you more details. But once you get into production, that's something that you want to turn off, because it may expose some credentials for you. And it's something that you do involuntarily, and most people forget to do this. And usually when you are in production, you don't have too many errors. So when you're doing your testing, you might not see that you have got debug set to true. The other thing that will get you, and Django has tried to make it clear, you can see it's labeled in bold there, security warning on the right side there. 2 security warnings, the debug is equals to true that I was talking about, and then the secret key. The other thing that I wish they would have added a comment in there is your database settings. That's a huge security risk, just as the security keys. So the security keys, you don't want to push that to source control, right? And it's a mistake that a lot of people do. They create the project, they create the app, and then immediately they push it to source control with the key completely visible. Someone can do harm to your project with the security key. Same as your database. Someone can have access to your database directly if you push that. But towards the end, we'll take a look at how you can sort of structure this into a more concrete solution. The other thing to mention is the allowed hosts. You might have your local development server and a domain that you'll be using for that. That's not something that you'd want people that are not admins to work on it. So the next thing that we'll take a look at is the default Django admin. Django admin, well, depending on who you are talking to, arguably you would want to turn it off. Django admin itself, it's very secure, but it's just your admins. And unfortunately, in this day and age, people still reuse their passwords. So it's something that you should really consider whether you want it or you can turn it off. But if you consider it, the first thing that you should do is to change the default URL. I see this on a couple of number of sites. You get to a site, then you just do a /admin, and then you are presented with the admin login. That's something that you don't want to do. Firstly, because one can easily see what language you use to develop your web application or your website. And then they can quickly look through the history to see the security fixes, and some people don't update their Django version, so it's something that they can use to enter into your system quite easily. So you need to change that URL to something else which is not /admin. The other thing that you would need to do if you decide to keep the Django admin is to implement MFA. Django quite easily integrates with a lot of third-party libraries to implement MFA. Personally, I recommend Django OTP because I just feel it's quite easy to use. So MFA is just a good way, if you decide to keep the Django admin, to sort of add an extra layer of security. Like I said, Django is very secure, and they mainly achieve this through the use of middleware. Middleware is just like a bridge between your client and server. It's a very lightweight plugin. You can also build your own middleware, but I would encourage you not to do that unless if you really know what you are doing. So generally, if you are a web developer, you should know about OWASP top 10. If you don't, it's something that you should really look at. And Django sort of they take care of the OWASP top 10. And let's take a look at some of the few that they control. So CSRF or cross-site request forgery is it's an attacking tool where sort of attackers, they execute actions as if they are your legitimate server, but they are not, and this is something that they can do without the user noticing. They can ask you to change for your password, and you think that we are still in the same site. So Django takes care of that through using the CSRF view middleware. I have seen this being removed from projects for whatever reason, I don't know, but don't remove it. Just keep it there, even if you don't know what it does. Keep it there. The other common one is XSS or cross-site scripting. Basically, this is just an injection of a client side script. Usually that would be JS. Django also takes care of that. Unfortunately, for now, it's not on all the browsers. It's on some of the browsers. I'm hoping it will get to all the browsers, but the common ones, Chrome, Edge, Firefox, you name it, it's handled. Then clickjacking. Clickjacking is similar to phishing. Someone is just trying to make you click to somewhere where they will inject malicious things in there. Django also takes care of that. The middleware is called clickjacking. If you see it in the Django settings, don't remove it. Just keep it there. Okay, so after sort of seeing at how best you can structure your project, I looked around and there are third-party tools that you can easily use sort of to separate your settings and hide your security keys, because I just mentioned that you are not supposed to be showing them, but there is a way you can easily do it. I normally use a tool called .env. They've got a Django version of it, but I normally use just the Python.env version. And what you just do is you will create a .env file in your project root. If you don't know what that means, it just means where your manage.py file is. And then you put in your secrets in there. So that is your secret key, your database, your social auth keys, things like that. You put them in there. You can give them whatever names that you like. And all you need to do is to go back into the settings file, and then you import the .env file, and then you load it to call your secrets. That's how you do it. You get it through the os.getEnv, and then you specify the name that you have named your secret key in the .env file. Then you need to add the .env file to your .gitignore file, so that it doesn't track within the source control. This can work well as well in your production environment. You can just add in your .env file and everything should work as normal. Generally, you shouldn't use the same key for development, staging, and production. You should use different keys. So let's just take a look at the best practices. Like I mentioned before, number one, don't delete anything that's in the middleware unless if you really know what you are doing. You might be a security expert or think that Django's middleware is not good enough. You can build your own, but don't do that unless if you really know what you're doing. Then it's best practice to separate your settings. Like I said, have a different key for development, staging, and production. And then you need to really control who has got access to those keys. One way you can do that is to change the structure. If I can go back here. Just quickly go back here to the Django structure. Yeah, this one. So the settings file is it's just a file. Ideally, what you would need to do is to create a module within your project root, or where the manage.py file is, and you create a base. So base, basically you just rename your default settings file, and then you extract the settings, which is your security keys, debug goes to true or false, your allowed hosts, your database, and then you create different files for each. The only thing you need to remember is to tell your manage.py which file to use, depending on your development environment. So there are tools that you can use for this. I sometimes like cookie cutter, but if you are new to it, it's something that's it makes your project look complicated because it just got too many files moving around. But it'll be a good starting point to use something like Cookie Cutter to do that. But that's outside the scope of this talk. Then change admin URL. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. You also need to quickly look at what Django is releasing and update your Django version. I know it's something that's difficult to do, but it's one of those things that you have to do. Then the last thing is a best practice. You need to hide your secret key. So people tend to do that as the second or third commit. But I had forgotten that that's in your history of your commits. So once you do that, it will stay there for forever, unless if you have to delete your repo. So just remember that. Yep. So that's pretty much it. We have looked at how you should turn debugging. If you use Cookie Cutter, they have got like their little ribbon that's easier to know that debug is still on, but something that you definitely need to look at. And then we looked at Django admin. Personally, I think Django admin is secure. It's just the loopholes are your individuals that are using the Django admin. Hiding secrets, and I showed you how you can use .env to do that. Middleware, if you don't know anything about it, just don't touch it. It's best to leave it there. And we also looked at best practices that you can take a look at. Django itself, it has got good documentation around security. I know some would say Django documentation is not that friendly. I think it is. It's just that some of it links to a lot of places. So I think we have time for questions, if you have questions.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, so just a comment from my side before we start with the questions. I think you've touched on what I would consider the biggest issue with new Django projects or people that start with it in new is committing that security keys. I made that mistake time and time again. I haven't touched Django in years, but when I used to work with it, all of my repos had my security keys exposed. So yeah, no, definitely something to keep in mind. Any questions from you guys, from the audience?
Yeah. So my first question is, in terms of, you didn't mention the SMTP settings. They tend to also have your passwords there. Any reason why?
Not any specific reason. This is just a beginner-friendly thing. So no specific reason why, but that is very important.
All right. Second question is, in terms of your .env file, which specifies your environment variables, what is the procedure there in terms of, for example, if you deploy your Django project on your server and someone manages to hack or access your server, and they can get access to that .env file? what could be the best way to mitigate that?
That's quite difficult, right? I mean, if someone has got access to your server, probably they've access to everything. Yeah. So that's quite difficult. I don't know how to answer that question.
All right, and then last one is in terms of your automated deployments these days,
Yeah.
with things like Argo CD and all that. What is the best way to deploy with, like, setting up your env files? I mean, you want to push code directly into GitHub and you want to have your application running somewhere there. What's your recommendations for setting up credentials there in a secure way? I know you can use things like Vault or things. Any
Yeah,
hints there?
well, I guess that depends on where you are hosting your project. If you're in the cloud, there are a number of tools that you can use. If you are on a VM, I think there are a lot of third-party tools that you can use as well, sort of to secure your .env files. Yeah, there are quite a lot of things that you can do there. But it all depends on where you're hosting your project.
So not straightforward and simple,
Not straightforward and simple.
unfortunately.
It's
Yeah,
like
no. So if somebody
it's-
gains access to your server, you've got bigger problems than worrying about your .env file, definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have a recommendation of what they do in production for or to manage their .env files? I know I usually, when I set up a server, I load my .env and it never changes. So it's a one-time thing, logging into your server, loading your .env, and then still your CI/CD pipelines can deploy the code and rerun or reset up your environment or your folder structure without touching that .env. That's just what I would do. But I'm a novice. Any more questions? All right, thank you guys.